So after November retail sales numbers, even bank economists are coming out now and saying we're deep in recession territory. So what just happened? Let's get into the data and what just happened. So deep recession territory. Economists react to November retail sales blip. Canadian retail sales came in lower than expected in November, according to Statistics Canada, and economists say the figure demonstrates the strain high interest rates are putting on consumers. It's a continuation of that of the stories of consumers really being hard hit. Pedro and Túnez sales saw a 0.2% decrease in November, which missed the median estimate of a flat reading in a Bloomberg survey. In volume terms, retail sales also edged down 0.2% that month. So the Black Friday sales were an utter failure, as we can see with this data that has now come out for retail sales in November. So it's showing us a signal there that the economy is not doing well at all. Even though people were out spending money, they just weren't spending the amount of money that we've seen in prior years. So the consumer, as we know with consumer confidence, is extremely stretched. So if we go and take a look at the readings that we've had, so if you X out autos here, you can see that this year has been incredibly choppy with the high rates. So you had 0.9 in January, then minus 0.9, then minus 0.6, then 1.2, then minus 0.2, then minus 0.8, then 1.1, 0.2, 0.1, 0.4, and minus 0.5. So, you know, we're pretty much flat on the year, and consumers have been really hard hit when you think about it. And you've only got to look at consumer confidence, guys, which has ticked up in the past couple of months, but it's still below that 50 point, which is neutral. So it's still saying that consumers are pessimistic. And as I've said many times, things aren't going to go down in a straight line. So, you know, a lot of this, I think, is being driven by optimism that interest rates are going to come down in 2024. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because I think there are so many people on that side of the boat of interest rates coming down that I think it's not going to happen. I thought it would have been a possibility last year, and I was thinking that we'd see cuts in 2024, but now there's just so many people thinking that. I just think that maybe it's not going to come to fruition, or if it does, it's just going to be because of a massive economic crisis. And this is what the Bank of Canada is saying. So Tiff Macklem says 2024 will be a transition year for the economy. Too soon to consider rate cuts. Effects of higher interest rates still working their way through the economy. So Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem says he expects 2024 to be a transition year as higher interest rates slow down the economy, making way for lower inflation. So bear that in mind, guys, because you're going to hear about rate cuts, rate cuts, rate cuts, but the Bank of Canada is already expecting the economy to slow. They want to see unemployment rising. So is that really going to bend their hand to the point that they cut interest rates? I really don't know. I think this year is just going to be so unpredictable. I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm 50-50 on a lot of things this year, and the same goes with rate cuts, to be honest. When I think about my sentiment meter, for example, I'm always listening to my emotions. I'm digesting much of the same stuff that you guys digest as well. But the thing is, I use my emotions as a contrarian indicator. So right now, my emotions are telling me they're going to cut rates. They're going to cut rates in 2024. It's going to happen. So my head, my brain is saying they're probably not going to do that. So that's how I kind of use my emotions. So anyway, let's see what he says. In his final speech of the year, the governor laid out his expectations for a softer economy next year and offered criteria for the central bank to start discussing rate cuts. Notice he just said discussing there. He didn't even say start the action of rate cuts. The effects of past interest rate increases will continue to work through the economy, restraining spending and limit growth in employment. Unfortunately, this is what's needed to take the remaining stream out of inflation, McClem's remarks said. So interestingly enough, guys, as well, I would think about this. With the high immigration that we have right now, and we also have this high amount of government spending, that has the ability to kind of keep the economy looking better than it actually is. Those of you that own businesses that comment on these videos, I see your comments. I hear from you guys all the time. I know that we're deep in a recession right now, and you and I both know that we're in a recession. However, what I'm saying is this can kind of mask the data, making it look like it's actually better than it actually actually is in the real economy. And because most of these central planners, politicians are so disconnected with reality, they have no idea what's really going on and the struggles people are facing. I mean, for example, just look at what we've had over the past year with the labor market. We've seen massive job lines for entry-level jobs. You know, I see posts all the time on X and Reddit from people who've moved to places like Calgary and they've been looking for a job for 3-4 months and they can't find anything. So, you know, the labor market is far from rosy. So what you're being told and what's actually happening just does not gel. So it's interesting. And I think that's an interesting thought because, like I said, it can make that data look better than it actually is. And then I saw this as well. Canadians are getting sick of waiting on the sidelines for the housing market to improve. And this says a lot about sentiment, guys. And as you guys know, I think sentiment is just so incredibly important when it comes to a bubble like the housing bubble in Canada. A growing number of Canadians appear to be getting fed up with waiting on the sidelines for the housing market to improve. Just 20% of potential home buyers say they'll wait for prices to drop before making a move to enter the market. And only 21% intend to wait for interest rate cuts. And when you're thinking about those interest rate cuts, in fact, let's go to a Fed chart here. Yes, this is for US interest rates. I want you to bear that in mind. The reason why I'm using US interest rates in this chart is because it shows you the recessions and when they cut interest rates. We're not lucky enough that in Canada we have any decent data. We just have absolutely shit data. And as you can see, it pisses me off a lot because we have massive markets like the housing market supposedly, and you just can't get any decent data on it apart from a few sources which aren't really trustworthy. So anyway, if you look at what happened in the 2008 recession, for instance, they started cutting rates and then we entered a recession. Even if you look at 2019, they start cutting rates, enter recession, then they drop rates. If you look at what happened in 2001 in the dot-com, they started cutting rates, we enter the recession. If you look what happens in the 1990s, rates have started to come down and then we entered the recession and they went down even more. And then if you go back all the way to 1981, you can see here, same thing. Rates come down during the recession. So again, not a good sign. In fact, the only time is in 1979, 1980 when there was a recession where essentially rates was still going up. That was in a massive tightening cycle, which might actually be very similar to now. And I think it might be very similar to now. In fact, where they keep rates high, even though we're deep in recession, and it's just because these central planners are disconnected. And like I said, we have things happening like the population growth and the government spending that are masking a lot of the deteriorating economy that you and I both realize and see the reality in. And even so, with Statistics Canada, you know, we're getting data that is coming out every now and then that is showing exactly what is going on here. So you can see that the data has been all over the place this year. And that's the thing that I want to highlight. And consumer confidence, again, is not in a good place. If you look at 2019 levels here, we're nowhere near that. You know, 50 is the neutral number and we're below that. And yes, we've risen because things don't go down in a straight line. But look at this nice trend downwards here. I mean, it just does not look good. It doesn't look good at all. So when you think about, will the Bank of Canada cut rates? And, you know, I'm seeing all these articles. You've got people calling that the Bank of Canada is going to cut rates. And I think that's where a lot of the optimism is coming in markets where people are thinking, you know what, they're just going to cut rates. It's just what's going to happen. And there's going to be this soft landing. And you've got people in the housing market that are holding out as well. And they're waiting for rates to come down. I think they're going to be disappointed because when they do, it's just going to be a total disaster. And what I want to show you as well, which is really interesting, is homeowners are also warming to the idea of listing their properties for sale and buying a new one this year. The number planning to sell has ticked up to 12% in the fourth quarter from 10% in Q3. So more and more people are planning to sell. You've also got the effects of higher interest rates that are coming through. You've got more power of sales. You've got more private lenders that are forcing people to sell their properties. And eventually that's going to work its way through to the prime lenders. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody realizes this, but it's just a cycle at the end of the day. It starts off with the most risky subprime lenders. And then what happens after that? It moves to less risky and less risky and less risky. exactly like it did in 2008. I mean, the only thing you have to realize, guys, is if you think the housing market can just go up indefinitely, then that means that you think people can just take on debt indefinitely and somehow finance that. But leverage allows you to basically use your income and leverage it. But that goes to a certain point. Eventually, your debt payments eat up your entire income, and then you're completely screwed. And that's what we got to in 2021. That's where we're at right now. In fact, we pushed well beyond that, and now we're in the deleveraging cycle that I believe is beginning to show, because if you look at bank lending, it's never been this slow before, even if you go back to 2008. So it's absolutely insane what's happening, guys. We're seeing more and more indications that the economy is very, very unhealthy. Don't fall for these narratives that rate cuts are going to be a great thing, because like I said, just look at the data. Just look at that chart. How many recessions follow rate cuts? So it's undeniable at that point, but will we see a massive amount of stimulus again? Who knows? Who knows? Flip a coin. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for a VPN, go to expressvpn.com/market mania. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might also like this playlist here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.